Good evening. This is James Exum coming to you from my home in South Austin, Texas. This video will be a follow-up on the one I did yesterday on the subject of is there a hidden agenda as to what's happening because of the oil reserves in Venezuela. Well, the idea is still formulating. It hasn't quite bloomed yet, but you can see some movement beneath the surface, so to speak. This particular video's tentative title will be Geopolitical Summary of the U.S. Venezuelan Tensions. When I mean tensions, I mean potential military problems. Earlier today, in fact, just a few hours ago, about between 4 and 5 hours ago, there was a post on Truth, and it could be more, could be less. There was a post on Truth Social where Trump said, quote, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. Well, you remember, possibly, if you've heard any of my latest videos, one in which I mentioned Queen Elizabeth, I'm talking about the first, and Sir Walter Raleigh, and how he did pirating for her. And, you know, she had an enemy at the time, which was the Spanish Armada. And so we're going back to that point in history. We're using terminology from that point in history. Armadas. It's an interesting choice of words, folks. So he said that on Friday the 12th. Month, 16th day, 25, which is today, and as I said, I'm coming to you from my home in South Austin. It's approximately 10:30 in the evening. This is a later one for me, but I was still gathering data and writing this discourse. All of the videos I produce for you and narrate for you, write for you, produce for you, are written by me. I do my homework, I put it together, and I save it, I set it up, I put it on my computer screen, my large computer screen. Then I go to my studio at YouTube, and I get ready and I read it to you, and then I do commentaries along the way. Geopolitical Summary, U.S. Venezuela Tensions is the title of this, and this is a Yogi's viewpoint. I'm James Exum, also known as Sakshi. Sakshi is my yogi name, and it means the witness. Well, I am the witness to history, and that's how it goes. And being the witness to history, not just to myself, Sakshi basically means the witness that resides within the body in the form of the soul. But in this case, I'm witnessing to the world what I have seen and witnessed historically in the last week, and more precisely today. And now we'll go ahead and start. I will dive in. As of the most recent data available, the U.S. House of Representatives has voted to allocate approximately $886 billion to the Pentagon budget for the fiscal year. This figure reflects the defense spending approved by the House, which includes funding for military personnel, operations, procurements, and research. While the U.S. House of Representatives has approved a substantial Pentagon budget for the fiscal year, there is fiscal year, not physical, fiscal, F-I-S-C-A-L. There is no direct evidence to suggest that former President Trump would initiate, not only is he former president, but he is president, Trump would initiate military actions against Venezuela to remove Maduro or seize oil reserves based solely on this allocation. Well, if you round up 886, you might as well be saying 1,000, and 1,000 billion is 8 trillion. So we're talking about almost $1 trillion here, folks. Decisions regarding military intervention involve complex geopolitical considerations, international law, regional stability, and diplomatic relations. Budgetary increases alone do not indicate intent intent or likelihood of such actions without supporting policy statements or developments. This I'm giving as a disclaimer. The ability of the voted allocation for use in the future land and sea war against Venezuela would depend on the specific terms and restrictions set by the approving authority. Again, we're talking about the Congress, and more especially, we're talking about the House. It hasn't gone to the Senate yet, I don't believe, or it hasn't gone to the President's desk. Assessing the probability that President Trump would declare war on Venezuela following an order to blockade. Assessing the probability that President Trump would declare war on Venezuela following an order to blockade oil tankers requires good, careful consideration of both historical precedent and current context. While Trump has previously demonstrated a willingness to take bold geopolitical actions, sometimes without full congressional approval, sometimes without any congressional approval, there is, well, except for his side of the aisle, there is no direct evidence to suggest that he would pursue outright military conflict with Venezuela at this point in time. Well, he's up to something, and it all seems to be falling together. He's blasted the boats, he's grabbed the ship for the oil the other day, and now he's put out this declaration on Truth Social. He's got a little armada down there, the largest ever seen in the history of South America, surrounding a country. It's pretty easy to surround Venezuela. It's only got one coastline, and that's to the north and northeast. The rest of it are other South American countries. And by the way, there is a line, if my geography is right, there's a line of mountains for Caracases, so that part of Venezuela from the almost direct north is guarded by that line of mountains. Okay. Decisions of this magnitude, talking about taking bold outright military conflict with Venezuela at this time, decisions of this magnitude typically involved extensive legal, diplomatic, and strategic reviews, and congressional authorization remains a significant barrier, but that doesn't seem to be stopping him. In fact, I think he thinks he is unstoppable, and 50 shades of that pretense that sent the Nazis into Poland under the pretense they had shot at them, and they took out their radio stations and all that and just slid in there. Based on the available context and the complexity of military intervention decisions, the likelihood of Trump declaring war on Venezuela can reasonably be estimated at less than 10%. Well, that's in the real world. Well, you know, and I know, and we all know that we're not necessarily in the real world at this moment. We're in Trump. Walt Disney named everything after him, but he was a good guy, supposedly. And Trump's named everything after himself. So in Trump land, in Trump world, that 10% doesn't mean a damn thing. Nothing. Zero. It means zero. He used to love to do that when he was talking, put up that finger, that just zero. This Trump, based on the available context and complexity of military intervention decisions, the likelihood of Trump declaring war on Venezuela can reasonably be estimated at less than 10%. Well, he's not a reasonable man, so we can toss that one out the window. This assessment reflects the absence of supporting policy statements. Well, of course it would. The intricacies of international law. Since when does he respect international law? And a lack of direct linkage between defense budget allocations and specific intervention plans. Well, he tore down part of the White House then they came after him and said, well, you can't do that. And he said, well, excuse me, I've already done it. That's the same thing here. He'll do it and then think of an excuse why they can't bother him or come after him for having done it. If the allocation is not explicitly limited to certain operations or time frames, it may be possible to use these resources in future conflicts. Well, I'm not saying the war is coming. I'm saying, in my old opinion, there's a high possibility, probability. I'm not about 10%. My logical meter is leaning more towards 75 to 90%. If Maduro were to react in a hostile manner, such as by escalating military posturing, threatening U.S. interest, or taking aggressive actions against oil tankers or neighboring countries, it could significantly heighten tensions between the United States and Venezuela. Such a response might prompt the U.S. government to consider additional diplomatic measurements, impose further economic sanctions, or increase its military presence in the region as shown as a show of deterrence. However, in any direct military engagement, there would still face substantial legal, strategic, and political barriers, and would likely require clear justification and further authorization from Congress before proceeding. Given all available information, there is currently no strong indication that war between the United States and Venezuela is imminent. Well, again, this all falls within the region of normalcy. Well, since when has he acted normally? Or since when has he stayed within a region or limitations? Given the current context, both Trump and Maduro could take specific actions that might escalate tensions towards a potential declaration of war. On the U.S. side, Trump could order a blockade of Venezuelan oil tankers. Well, he did that today. He did that today, folks, and we'll get to that. Increased military exercises near Venezuelan waters. He's been building that up, and now he's got his budget. Well, maybe you're saying, well, you're just an old man, and do you know what you're even talking about, Exum? Do you know anything about the military? Well, yes, I do. I served during the Vietnam War. I didn't go to Vietnam, but I served during that period. And I observed how Johnson and Nixon and the boys, and Kennedy, and even Eisenhower were involved in the nuances of that war. So, Trump could order a blockade of Venezuelan oil tankers. Well, he's done it. Increase military exercises. Check. I'm going to go down my checklist. Check. Or issue strong public statements threatening military actions. Check. Such moves would signal heightened resolve and could provoke a military or diplomatic response from Venezuela. Well, wait till tomorrow and let's see what the headlines, how they read. Maduro, in turn, could escalate by mobilizing Venezuelan military forces, conducting aggressive maneuvers near U.S. interests or allies in the region, or threaten to disrupt oil shipments to the United States. Well, he's not going to have to do that. Trump just cut him off. Ships going out and ships going in are now part of Trump's American blockade against the ports of Venezuela. That happened this afternoon. If either leader pursues these aggressive steps without seeking diplomatic solutions, he's done it. I told you, he does not worry about diplomatic solutions, international law, congressional opinions or blessings. He just does as he damn well pleases. The risk of miscalculation increases. Well, I told you earlier, at 10%. Has nothing to do with reality. Trump's reality. potentially pushing both countries closer to direct conflict and a formal declaration of war. I'm not trying to scare anybody in my audience. I'm just reporting what I know is happening as the witness to history. While the Pentagon budget has been significantly increased and President Trump has a history of aggressive, assertive foreign policy actions, these factors alone do not provide significant evidence to suggest that military conflict is on the horizon. These are my disclaimers. In a scenario where hostilities have escalated, though, actions such as the bombing of Venezuelan fishing boats or the seizing of oil tankers could be considered provocative measures that would likely intensify the conflict and draw international scrutiny. I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here. I'm trying to play Lady Justice. I'm showing you both sides of the scales, and I'm weighing them out for us. Such incidents would not only disrupt maritime operations and regional trade, but could also be interpreted as acts of war, prompting Venezuela to respond with heightened military or diplomatic countermeasures. Now I'm going to give you some bullet points to review what I've been talking about. Point number one, the U.S. House of Representatives has voted to allocate approximately $886 billion, which rounded up to $1 trillion, to the Pentagon budget for the fiscal year, supporting the funding for military personnel, operations, procurements, and research. Trump could order a blockade of Venezuelan oil tankers, increase military exercises near the Venezuelan border, or issue strong public statements threatening military actions, signaling heightened resolve. The reason you're getting a mixture here of what could happen and what has happened is I wrote most of this before it did happen. So I'm having to correct as I go with my commentary. I'm having to update it. I could have done that before I came online with you and recorded this, but I'd like to show you how fast things are moving out there. You know, my typing's about 40 to 50 words a minute. The happening of news and the happening of actual world events is a hell of a lot faster than that, and the signaling coming out of the presentation of world events around the world travels at the speed of light almost. Definitely faster than the speed of sound. The Pentagon budget allocation provides resources that might be available for future conflicts. Check. Including potential operations against Venezuela. Check. If not explicitly restricted. He's not going to give a tinker's damn about restrictions. There have been no direct actions or evidence reported this year of Trump or the Pentagon initiating military intervention or planning to take down Maduro, and no immediate escalation has occurred. Well, again, I wrote it before it happened, and it has happened. The complexity of international law, the need for congressional authorization, and the absence of clear policy statements supporting intervention all point to a low probability of war in the future. Well, that's true, or was true, before things escalated during the time I wrote this, which was about, I ended writing this about 6 or 7 in the afternoon. Here we are at 10 at night, and all these things have happened that I've run across online while looking at latest news and having to remember for you and report them to you. Overall, the situation remains one of heightened attention rather than immediate threat, and any potential escalation would likely require substantial shifts in both policies and circumstances. However, any reallocation of new military engagements would likely require authorization and review to ensure legal and strategic compliances. Now, this is the update of all of that. That was written, and then I did update it by putting this in to the discourse I'm reading and presenting to you. Geopolitical summary, U.S.-Venezuela tensions. The current dynamics between the United States and Venezuela are marked by elevated tensions, with both nations engaging in an assertive posturing but stopping short of direct military confrontation. Venezuela's leadership under Maduro has capacity to escalate matters through military mobilization and provocative maneuvers, potentially targeting U.S. interests or disrupting vital oil shipments. Well, Trump has done that for him, the shipment part. Conversely, U.S. actions, including increased Pentagon funding, $886 billion, almost $1 trillion, and declared oil tanker blockades out of and declared oil tanker blockades out of and into Venezuela points, virtually cutting off Maduro's oil reserves. Maduro's oil revenues, not reserves. He has the greatest reserves of base oil in the world, as I reported in my last video. This action today by Trump could do nothing but heighten military activity, signaling a readiness to respond to Venezuela's provocations if they occur. In simpler words, the possibility of war has just dramatically increased. Despite these developments, substantial legal and political constraints such as necessity for congressional authorizations and adherence to international law serve as significant deterrents against outright war. Well, he's got the Congress in his pocket, the majority. Think Pearl Harbor, or think the Bay of Pigs, or think anything you want to think. There is no concrete evidence of imminent military intervention from the U.S., and recent policy decisions do not indicate an immediate escalation. But there is an escalation. Blocking those harbors, that's an indication, and that's a policy decision. Such should hostilities intensify. Incidents like attacks on maritime assets could provoke international scrutiny and further complicate the situation. In summary, while the geopolitical environment remains tense and closely watched, the probability of direct conflict is low, bearing major shifts in policy or circumstances. Future military engagement would require additional legislation and legislative and strategic review, reinforcing the current status quo of vigilance rather than immediate threat. Again, I'm playing both sides of the ping pong table here, and I'm hoping for the best for both countries. I don't want war. I've seen so many wars in my lifetime. I was born during the Korean War. I mean, there's been some pettiness out there, and blood and treasure. Half of my high school graduation class males died in Vietnam. I've seen enough of it. I'm 75. It sickens my heart. But if you look at what's actually happening on the political scene in the United States right now, Trump has 2 or 3 days left before those files of his petty buddy or whatever they call those people that mess with children, have to be opened, have to be given to the public. But if he's got something like this shifted from the back burner to the front burner, guess where the opening of those files go? They go to the back burner. How convenient. He's such a clever man. He's like one of those circus tumblers, or not jugglers. You know, if you're not fascinated and your attention isn't taken away by him juggling 2 balls, then he'll throw in a third one. And if that doesn't keep your eye off what he wants you not to look at, then he'll throw in a 4th one. And then he'll go over, and while he's doing that, to a row of plates and put them on a stick and start spinning those. And now he's got 10 plates spinning, 3 balls juggling, and he's paying attention to anything except what he and his minions are doing, which is the usual game of, throwing all that glittery stuff into the air to distract you from the reality of what he's doing behind the scenes. But in his case, he's doing it wide open. He doesn't even hide it. He just keeps distracting you like an old con man. Now you see it, now you don't. And what you see is your money, and what you don't see is how he makes it disappear from the treasury into his own family pockets, more especially his. And there we are. That's enough there. They ought to be able to, I suppose I spoke treason. I don't know. What is treason anymore? Is it coming from the Oval Office, or is it coming towards the Oval Office? Who knows anymore? Well, it's secondary truths. There's truth, and then there's truth social. I'm not laughing at that. I'm just laughing at the irony. It's just totally ironic. Well, we're just past 26 minutes. Let's see if we can kick this out by 30. I'll go ahead and stretch it out a little bit. So, well, no, I won't. I'll just end it when it ends. So be good to yourself. Be good to others. And be good to strangers. And if you like this, what I just mentioned here, bring it up to date on most things. That's wonderful. If you didn't like it, that's okay too. But if you liked it, pass it on to friends and family. And I just saw something when I was going through these numbers. They were announcing earlier that Trump's ballroom is going to be $300 billion. Well, I thought they were making a mistake. I thought they were trying to say $300 million, but they kept repeating billion. Well, how can a ballroom cost 1/3 of the national defense budget? We're in La La Land, boys and girls. And I hope and pray every day that we fall back into the land of normalcy. Everybody climbs out of the rabbit holes and looks at the sunlight and goes, oh, we're back. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful? It's coming. Just be patient. He's on his last leg as president. He's a lame duck. He's going to try not to be a lame duck. He's going to try to pull a Jesus and heal himself. He's going to try to get up and walk and pull the shades off his eyes, and the blind will see, and the lame will walk, and the deaf will hear, and the mute will talk. He's going to try to pull every trick out of the book of con that he can. Well, they learned from Roy Cohn, the great deceiver of New York, the great lawyer and teacher and con man himself. I mean, he comes from a family of con artists. Look at what his daddy did. Look at what his mother did. Look at his grandfather. Look at the history of the Trumps. And you will be amazed. Go climb into his family tree and look around. You'll be amazed where that money came from. And then 100 years down the road, you will be amazed where Barron and the boys and the family and the girls' money came from, if you're looking backwards. Well, there it is. I've whipped that horse. I don't want to whip it to death. I whipped it enough. But I can hardly wait for tomorrow's headlines to see how accurate this old Yogi was and what he shared and explained to his viewers. Well, good night to you. Don't threat. There's been wars and wars. The Christ said there are wars, and there will be rumors of wars. There always have been, there always will be. So good night, and thank you so much. But do your own homework. Do your own research. Fact check me as much as you like. And I'll be off here and there, but not on the big points. Okay. And remember, I care for y'all, or I wouldn't be doing this for you. I'm retired. I don't have to do this. But good night and thank you again. See you next time.